So everyone's been talking about the brand new horror film titled Weapons, and I just got out of theaters from seeing this film on the big screen, and I couldn't be more excited to talk about it with you guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the review. Let's go. Weapons is a new horror mystery film directed by Cregger. If you don't know about this director, he's done films in the past such as Barbarian in 2022, which is one of my favorite horror films of all time. More recently, he's done a sci-fi thriller titled Companion, which came out earlier this year. That was also a fantastic film. So leading up into this movie, I was very excited to see this on the big screen, especially with all the rave reviews it's been getting. And I'm happy to say that this movie turned out very well. So first things first, let's go ahead and talk about the plot for this film. When all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanish on the same night at exactly the same time, a community is left questioning who or what is behind their disappearance. So as you heard there, when this film begins, the basic premise for this film is that an entire classroom of children end up disappearing, with only two people left behind who attend that classroom, that being the teacher and one specific child inside the class. So with that being the mystery set up by this film, it leaves you with so many questions that need answers, and throughout this entire movie, the director is slowly drip feeding answers to the audience, and it just leaves you wanting more as you work your way through here. And yeah, let's just go ahead and talk about this movie, starting with my positives for Weapons. And for my first positive with this movie, I want to talk about the fact that this is an anthology film. If you aren't aware what that is, it is essentially a collection of stories that is provided to the audience. And the way that Cregger does it throughout this film is by giving us different perspectives of each individual inside of this movie. Each main character, you get to see exactly what was happening to them as this weird, strange event is currently going on. And each of these characters' perspectives provide the audience with a piece of information that is important to the overall plot that is going on. So the way that the director sets this up and executes this, I thought it was genius. It lets the audience get more in tune with each individual character and learn more about them and see something that only they would know, while also providing us with background information that gives us more insight as to who they are as a person. And it was all just very well executed. So let's go ahead and dive more into my positives with this film. Let's talk more about the characters that you get to see inside of this anthology film. And we're going to go ahead and start with Julia Garner. Now, of course, a lot of you may know Julia Garner from the popular Netflix TV series Ozark, where she does an amazing job inside that series. Or more recently, you may know her from the Fantastic Four, because of course she plays the Silver Surfer. And across the board, not only in those films, but in this film particularly, she does a fantastic job with the character of Justin Gandy. You see, Justin Gandy is the teacher for this class of students that goes missing. So of course, her being at the center of this anomaly, she is the main target for all of the parents of the missing children, and she gets a lot of hate throughout this entire movie. The town sort of has like a witch hunt going on for her, where she feels like she is just the most hated person in the town, obviously, because while everyone is desperate for answers and she happens to have none herself, she sort of just ends up as a victim in this entire situation, even falling deeper into alcoholism, which they touch on heavily with her character. And I thought it was just a great character study when you're following Justine Gandy throughout her key moments inside of this movie. Now let's go ahead and move on to another positive, another actor that I wanted to highlight inside of this film, that being Josh Brolin. Of course, you may know Josh Brolin as the one and only Thanos, or also if you're a fan of the Deadpool movies, he plays Cable in those films. You know, this is an amazing actor, and it's no different here. He does an amazing job inside this film. I loved his portrayal of this father who is just desperate for answers and wants to get his child back, and may not have been the best parent while his child was still around, so he holds some resentment and some regret around that. And he kind of plays our detective here. Now, while he's not directly working with law enforcement, he is of course a desperate parent with a lot of time on his hands, so constantly throughout this film he's searching for answers. He's going to talk to plenty of different characters. He's putting things together himself, and it was nice to explore this world through his lens and through his eyes. I think he did a great job with the character of Archer Graff, and I thoroughly really enjoyed what he provided to this film throughout the entire movie. Now let's move on to the next character that I wanted to highlight here, and that would be Benedict Wong. You may know him from the Doctor Strange films, right? Plays a sorcerer in those movies. He's Doctor Strange's right-hand man. Well, inside of this movie, he plays the character of Andrew Marcus, aka the principal of the school that has all the missing children. So like all of these other characters, he is very integral to the plot here. He himself is trying to piece together a lot of missing pieces here, trying to talk to the parents of the missing kids and figure out what could have happened to these children with such a tragic event taking place at his school of all places. Now, while he's not as much of a lead as Julia Garner or Josh Brolin, he still does a fantastic job with what he is given here, and the script gave him some unforgettable moments inside of this film, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when you go to watch it, okay? No spoilers, but let's go ahead and move on to my next positive with the movie Weapons, and that would have to be the mystery set up by this film. Now, of course, we talked about it in the plot synopsis, but to go into it just a little bit more, once you really get into almost the paranormal activity that's happening inside of this film, with all of these children, you know, hitting the Naruto run and running out in the middle of the night into the dark, never to be seen again. Once you dive more into this movie and more into the horror themes that are present inside of this film, you really start to get more into the area of the occult. And I really love how far this movie pushed those elements of the occult and just how creepy and weird and eerie that got. I won't tell you more than that when it comes to the occult elements of this video until we get into the spoiler section later in this video, but I do want to say that they did a great job with it. If you've ever, you know, gone into those internet rabbit holes and really just kept digging deeper and deeper into the creepy and eerie side of life, this movie does a great job implementing those elements into this movie, and I think we got another cult classic here with this film, to be quite honest with you. Now let's move on to my next positive with this film. Let's talk about one more character that I did want to discuss, and that would have to be James. Now James is this homeless drug addict inside this film. You know, they tie him in a very interesting way where he seems like he should really have nothing to do with this plot, but come to find out that couldn't be further from the truth, and he was just a great comedic relief. He was hilarious inside of this movie, which, by the way, that's another positive that I want to highlight here, that being how funny this movie actually is. I really didn't expect how much comedy and how much humor was going to be here. You have so many little moments where the audience just gets a good chuckle and a good laugh, and James is tied to a lot of those. So I thought Austin Abrams did a great job with the character of James, and yeah, let's move on to the next positive that I had with this film, and this is going to be my final positive for this section of the video. It would have to be the performances, because the performances here, the acting caliber that's on display, how believable this movie feels when you're watching these people on screen. You're buying their stories, you want to see the best outcome happen for these characters, and the acting here just takes this film where this could be, you know, seen as a goofy concept, and it just solidifies it as a serious horror film where everything is suddenly believable and where this world feels so lived in, and you just buy into their individual lives as you're watching through each of their perspectives here. And I just thought, just around the board, round of applause for the cast here, because their acting caliber is on a different level here. Now with that being said, that would be my positives for this film Weapons. Let's go ahead and move into my next section here, and that would be the negatives for the Weapons movie. Now my one and only negative with this film, it does tie into the anthology part of this movie, and quite honestly, you could consider this a bit of a nitpick, but it is something that I had a problem with, so I did want to discuss it in this section of the video because that's what it's intended for. Now my one and only negative with this movie after my first watch would be how repetitive it is, because quite honestly, as you're watching through these different perspectives, don't get me wrong, it's fascinating at times. In fact, it's fascinating for the majority of the times, but in other times it felt very repetitive. There was a lot of just repeated scenes throughout this movie where you're watching the exact same event take place multiple times, but just through a different character's lens, and really nothing changes about the scene whatsoever. It felt like they really filled up a lot of the runtime here for this movie with things that could have been on the cutting room floor. Quite honestly, it reminded me of the movie The Last Duel. If you've ever seen that film, Ridley Scott does a very similar thing with that movie where you watch the exact same event take place 3 different times, and that is exactly what it felt like while watching this movie, except it's not just one particular event, content, it's multiple that you watch multiple times. So it just felt too repetitive. It felt like it was a bit overdone. Like we could have been more focused on the essential plot here and just revealing more to the audience, and we could have just filled up the runtime with more interesting sequences instead of just feeling like they were padded out by these, again, repetitive scenes. So that would be my one and only negative with this film, quite honestly. So let's go ahead and move into my overall review for the film Weapons. Guys, Zach Cregger is on a different level with this film. I really think he solidified his position as one of the top directors in Hollywood with the release of this movie. And not only this movie, but the previous films I mentioned, such as Companion, which released this year, or Barbarian, which came out in 2022. Again, Barbarian, I feel like, is so underrated. He subverts so many expectations inside of that movie, and he does the same thing here with this film. I love how sick this guy's mind is. I love how he just delves into these dark areas and really takes it all the way there for the audience. I love how original this movie felt with not only its concept and its idea, but again, its execution here, with it being an anthology series, but all of these characters know each other. They're all tied into one big overarching story here, and the way he just provides little bits of information piece by piece until you finally find out what is truly going on and what's behind this big paranormal event that took place. It's just fantastic. Across the board, this is fantastic, from the performances to the directing to the horror elements here to the mystery elements, which was definitely my favorite part of this movie. As you watch through this film and try to piece it together in your own head, I just had a blast watching this. It was a fantastic theatrical experience, one that I'll definitely never forget, and one that I hope you will go out and enjoy too. So if you're looking for a new horror experience that is worth your time at the cinemas, I think this is definitely the right film to go out and see this weekend. It's full of brilliant performances, and it's one that's going to stick with me for a very long time, and I can't wait to see what Zach Cregger does next, because he's on fire right now. 3 bangers in a row, so whatever he does next, I'm sure is going to be amazing too, and I can't wait to see it on the big screen. But with that being said, guys, it's time we drop my official rating for the film Weapons. If I had to rate this movie, I would go ahead and give this film a 9.5 out of 10. It gets the 9.5 out of 10. A fantastic theatrical experience, as I previously stated. Make sure you go out and support this movie at the box office so we get more of these Zach Cregger films, and we could just be creeped out and horrified all over again by whatever he has creeping around in that mind of his. So yeah, those are my thoughts on this film. I'd love to know your thoughts on the movie Weapons down in the comment section down below. That was my non-spoiler section for this movie, so if you haven't seen it yet, make sure you cut the video off here. You go out and do that, and then you return back for the spoiler section, because for those who have already seen this movie, we're going to go ahead and get into my spoiler talk for the film Weapons. Now that we're in the spoiler section, we can go ahead and loosen up a little bit. We could talk a little bit more freely about the insanity that I just witnessed on the big screen. And the very first thing I want to talk about is the character of Paul Morgan. Now, this is the officer inside of this movie that we get to follow for a little bit, played by Alden Ehrenreich, and I just love what he did with this role, okay? Because from Julia Garner's perspective, right, from Justine's perspective, he is this ex that she hooks up with from time to time, and that she hooks up with inside of this movie. And when you see him from her perspective, he is this non-intimidating, kind of goofy officer character, right? He's not a character that you find intimidating whatsoever when he's introduced to the audience inside of this movie. But when you watch from James' perspective and you watch from his perspective, he becomes horrifying. And I loved what they did with that, right? Because when you watch it from Paul's perspective, when he gets into a rage about the character of James, and you just get to see this officer who is just full of rage and just going off the rails here, that is truly horrifying, because that's someone who holds a position of power with not only the badge that he has, but of course the weapons that he comes around. And when he is sort of terrorizing James in this movie, he comes across so intimidating. I love the level of range out of the Paul character inside of this movie, and yeah, I just wanted to talk about that, highlight that, because it was creepy as hell. Now, I also find it hilarious how he just kept getting poked with this drug addict's needles over and over. How he didn't catch something, I have no idea, but it was a nice comedic relief moment there. I also want to talk about the point of Julia Garner's character, where she's just going to the store over and over again, getting more alcohol because she is stressed the hell out with all of this blame being put on her for no apparent reason. I mean, of course, you're the only classroom that this happened to, so what the hell were you doing with these kids? What were you teaching these kids? But at the end of the day, of course, we soon find out she had absolutely nothing to do with this. So she's just being tormented by this town. It's pushing her more into her addictions. And then she walks outside and sees witch written on her car. Now, I love that we eventually find out what character wrote that on her car, that being Josh Brolin's character, right? He had the red paint in the back of his car. Of course, he's the one who ends up painting it on her car. We never actually see that take place in the movie, but it makes it very apparent when he pulls outside of her house and then it slowly pans down to the paint cans. Why he never apologized for that inside of this movie, I have no idea. I felt like that was definitely necessary, but it's funny how on the nose he was with the word witch, because of course, what we're going to talk about next is the character of Gladys Lily. This is one of the best horror movie villains that I've seen in recent times. I loved this character, this witch, and like I said, Josh Brolin's character was right on the nose with calling her a witch, because that is exactly what she is. Like I said, it dives more into the occult here, so now we could talk about that more. The fact that she is into this witchcraft, this voodoo type work, creepy as hell, the way she does this work with the sticks, and then she grabs a piece of your hair or something else related to you, another object of your possession that she just takes from you, wraps it around this stick. She's doing this black magic, rituals. It's creepy as hell. The fact that she's just this bald lady, which it says multiple times in this film that she's sick. So if I had to guess, based on her appearance, I would say that this character is someone suffering from cancer. But I love how they use that to just add to her disturbing appearance, because the way her head's shaped, it's like slightly morphed in a weird way. When Alex, the little kid, is peeking into her room and sees her, it's like, oh God, oh my goodness, who is this random, ant lady coming to live with me? She's creepy as hell. And then his parents end up changing. She ends up, doing this weird voodoo black magic on her own family, which is crazy as hell. Why was she doing that to her sister and her husband and just coming into their lives and just completely disrupting everything? I have no idea, but it really reminded me of the movie Hereditary. If you ever watched that movie, they kind of have something similar happen in that film, because that film dives heavily into the occult also, but I don't want to touch on it too much in case you haven't seen it. Make sure you go watch Hereditary. In fact, I have a movie reaction to Hereditary. It's up on the channel. Go check that video out. Put a lot of heart into that video. So that's a very fun one to go watch. You get to see me be creeped out my first time watching that movie. But yeah, it reminded me a lot of that movie. It was very similar to the ending of that film. So getting to see this creepy witch lady just start to take over this entire town, possesses, her sister, the husband, possesses all these kids, and then eventually starts getting into the principal, what she does to him. Oh my goodness, that was a crazy as hell scene where she's like, yeah, can you get me some water, but can you put it in a bowl, please? And you're like, what the hell? At first I'm thinking this is some type of demon in human form, which she just might be with the action she takes inside of this movie. But I'm thinking this person cannot be a human being, right? Because who the hell drinks water out of a bowl? Come to find out, she was not using that bowl to drink out of whatsoever. She was using it, for her little witchcraft work. Whenever she drops the wooden sticks into the bowl, it kind of just cuts the spell off completely. So that was creepy as hell. That was interesting. I love that scene where, Benedict Wong is just forced to kill his husband. That was a crazy as hell scene there. And yeah, every time she pops up in this movie, she is just ominous, because she wears this weird, ginger wig with the just terrible bangs that you can clearly tell, like, what the hell do you have on your head, lady? And then she wears this this outfit that's very like circus clownish with the amount of colors that she has throughout her outfit. And her appearance is just very off-putting. And the way she speaks and her mannerisms, everything, she did a fantastic job with this performance. Again, I couldn't talk about it in the non-spoiler section for obvious reasons, because you don't really learn about that character until like halfway in the movie. But Amy Madigan playing Gladys Lily, she did an amazing job with this character. This is going to be one of my favorite characters to go back and think about and talk about. And yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I gave her some type of highlight inside this video, so I figured the spoiler section was the moment to do that. Now, her using the salt lines was crazy, right? You've seen that probably in a lot of films or series that have popped up throughout the years. So getting to see that displayed here, where if you cross the line, these, I don't know, spiritually possessed people just start darting at you and doing anything in their power that they can to take you the hell out. It was creepy, it was disturbing, it was horrifying, it was very zombie-like. That's what it kind of felt like. But these people were still alive, they're just sort of spiritually possessed by whatever the hell voodoo work she was doing. I love the way that they displayed that inside of this film. The fact that the kids were in the basement of this house the whole time, which, to be honest, I thought that was going to happen very early in this film. When I seen them just sprint out the house, I'm like, what the hell? And then you see this house that's newspapered up and the one kid who didn't go missing is going into that house and he lives there. I thought it was very obvious that, okay, the kids, you know, they're somewhere in this location, but just them all gathered in the basement, and then when James goes and takes a peek and they all just turn and look at him, creepy as hell. Great job with that. What she planned to do with them, I have absolutely no idea. I'm guessing she planned to use them, I don't know, as some fountain of youth to help herself get younger through some, I don't know. They never really explain it, to be honest with you. They don't exactly tell the audience what her plan is, other than the fact that she wants to collect them. She says, you know, one particular line where she says, I thought your parents could help me get better, you know, through, I guess, her spiritually possessing them, doing voodoo on them, whatever. And they didn't, because I'm guessing they're just older. They have, I don't know, less life within them than a child would. So she ends up possessing all of these kids to, I don't know. Like I said, we don't really know. I'm guessing though, keep her alive in some type of way by feeding off of their youth. Outside of that, the movie never explicitly says what she planned to do with them. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the final scene of the movie so we can go ahead and wrap this review up. So in the final scene, right, the kid got to see her do this voodoo practice. She pretty much taught him how to do it while trying to intimidate him throughout this film. So he ends up doing it, ends up wrapping the hair around the stick, ends up breaking it to save himself when his own parents are attacking him, right? And then you get this fantastic scene where it's a bit creepy, it's a bit horrifying, but it's also a bit funny. Like I said, this movie was very humorous, where all the kids were, well, first of all, she goes, oh no, like somehow she hears the break of the thing way upstairs. Like she just knows, she has some sixth sense for this type of magic, I guess we can call it. And she goes, oh no. And then all these kids from the basement just start sprinting at her, full bolting at her. We get a scene where this old sick lady is trying her best to just book it out of there. She's running through the neighborhood. She's passing through houses, jumping through windows. She's doing whatever she can to get the hell away from them. And the whole time I'm watching this scene, I'm thinking, she is a sick elderly lady. There's no way she has this amount of stamina. Like, this can't last very long. She's going to get caught very soon, which of course ends up happening. And we get the most brutal scene in the entire movie, the most diabolical scene in this entire movie, where she gets her jaw just split and ripped off. Crazy as hell. I loved this movie. Zach Cregger did a fantastic job. I couldn't give him more, you know, of a round of applause. I couldn't give him more compliments after what I got to just witness on the big screen. I had a hell of a time watching this in theaters. And yeah, that was the spoiler section, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, where we got to talk about all the, you know, more in detailed things that had to do with this film, which, by the way, one question that I do have and that I want to leave with you and that I hope you can answer for me in the comment section, and that would be, what was the parasite thing here? I'm guessing it was the fact that, like I said, she plans to feed off of these people to keep herself artificially alive in some way through her magic. I'm guessing that's what that theme was. But if you noticed, when they first show the classroom, there's the word parasite on the board. Then we get a later scene where Julia Garner's teaching the kids about parasites. And yeah, it just was a very interesting detail that the director honed in on a lot, if you were paying attention, where we're constantly talking about parasites. So I'm guessing that's how it ties in with this witch character. But yeah, like I said, those are my thoughts on this film, guys. You know, we've talked about it enough. I'd love to know your thoughts on this movie down in the comment section down below. If you don't know what we do here on Demigod ENT, we do film, TV, and anime-based content. So if you're interested in this type of content, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.